One, a sport that spans hearts, minds and nations, where the 20 best drivers in the world come together to take on some of the world's most historic circuits. And that legacy continues today. The 2021 championship was thrilling from start to finish, and 2022 is set to be even better. New regulations will usher in an age of pioneering changes. New driving talent alongside returning champions will be dueling it out to the bitter end. The pressure will be on the team principals in the upcoming season as they manage their drivers, their cars, and the whole team to push to victory. This is not a challenge for the faint-hearted. This is Formula One.
Hello viewers and welcome into Wayne's World. My name is Wayne and welcome to episode 1 of our F1 Manager 22 career mode. Now first things first, if you are new around here, if you're a fan of Formula One, if you're a fan Formula One 22 game from Codemasters fan, if you're a fan of management games, Football Manager, or mainly and most importantly, if you're a fan of F1 Manager 22, hit that subscribe button down below. We are going to go live with regular and consistent content on this channel. We're pushing towards our next target, which is 200 subscribers. We passed 100 comfortably this year, ahead of schedule, so thank you to everyone who has subscribed and join in with this save. Now the main thing for me was picking a save that I would enjoy and hopefully be a little bit interesting for all of you guys to watch. And it was tough to know exactly, do you go with a top 3 team? Do you replace the likes of Binotto at Ferrari and you can potentially go with better strategies? Do you have a look at someone like Alpine, try and get them to their glory days with Fernando Alonso at Renault, or someone like Aston Martin or Alfa Romeo, who are historically brilliant teams and they potentially have the possibility of getting themselves to the front? But I had to think long and hard about it, and I thought, what would I want if I was in Formula One? And there's only one place to start, and that is with the Mercedes-Benz Formula One team.
Mercedes returned to F1 in 2010, and since 2014 they've won the Constructors' Championships back-to-back every year. In 2021, they took home the Constructors' Championship once more, although they narrowly missed out on the Drivers' Championship, coming in second. Heading into 2022, Mercedes will insist on dominating the competition. Nothing less than the fastest car and the most wins will give the Silver Arrows the outcome they want to see at the end of this new season and beyond.
We are going to be leading the new era, the new regulation change era, with Mercedes. Now the reason why I've gone for Mercedes, there's a number of reasons. First of all, Lewis Hamilton. Obviously I'm from the UK. Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest from all over in the sport from the UK, and he's just a hero of mine, an idol of mine. But storyline wise, we want to right the wrongs of that ending, that bittersweet ending of a fantastic season in 2021. We want to try our best to get Lewis Hamilton his 8th World Championship and put him just that one step ahead of Michael Schumacher in terms of pure numbers. On top of that, the Mercedes is struggling this year. Any fans of Formula One will know that for the majority of the season, they've been the 3rd best team on the grid. We need to make sure we rectify a lot of the problems that Toto Wolff and the engineers at Mercedes have given to this W13 car. Not only that, the new young upstart George Russell, his first season at Mercedes, we want to try and make sure we can do all we can to get him his first win with us in charge. It will be brilliant to oversee. And then Lewis Hamilton, what's going to happen with his future? Whether we can or can't successfully get him his 8th world title, he's probably coming towards the end of his career now. Who do we replace him with? Do we go with the reserve driver Nick De Vries? Will he be good enough to step into the legend that is Sir Lewis Hamilton's shoes? Or will someone else in the grid, or on the grid I should say, be looking for that step up to the Mercedes seat? So I'm excited to get as many upgrades as we can within the cost cap, but also improve Mercedes, because there's been a few issues over the last few years where tactically and strategy wise they've just not been at it. We want to make sure we change that. So we've taken over at Mercedes and we're going to go through some of the steps. Say hello to Audrey Mensa, senior engineer. Great to have us on board. It's great to be here. Thank you. And let's go through some of the step-by-step stuff to look out for on F1 Manager 22. So here is the main hub then on the homepage of your F1 Manager 22 screen. And if we look in our inbox, a welcome message from Audrey once again, who is a chief engineer. Now, going through all of these step by step, I'm sure you've seen a multiple amount of content creators show you the ropes, but everything is done via this home screen. You can look at your objectives here from the board, so you'll be able to see your board confidence when a few races have been and gone. Obviously we need to finish third or above in the constructors title, but we're Mercedes. We don't want to finish just third. We do want to make sure we are finishing in or around the top two where possible. And then in terms of things like staff, we need to make sure we've got the best staff. That will happen at later episodes, but the likes of Mike Elliott, is he going to be here for the long term? Bono, he's been around with Lewis Hamilton for the longest amount of time. I'm sure he'll be stuck around till the very end as well. But someone like Jared Murphy, do we have to improve with these guys? Remember, the Mercedes is a dangerous, unsafe bouncy ball at the start of the season, so it's difficult to know and difficult to control with what is going on in that car. We need to make sure that we get things sorted quickly. Drivers wise, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, probably the strongest partnership on the grid, but when Lewis Hamilton does retire or does decide to move on, George Russell is probably going to go into that number one slot. Who is going to partner George Russell at Mercedes? Car wise, we need to focus on car development, and that's what we're going to do. First up, we're going to have a look at a new project. We are going to design some side pods, because that's probably the biggest part of the concern. Mercedes have gone with the no pod design, so it'd be interesting once we get our pre-season results back to find out whether or not the side pods are something that do need to be upgraded or changed. And the floor as well. The floor, a big issue with regards to Mercedes bouncing. Can we fix that for them? So let's take a look at the home page. The aerodynamic testing period starts, so let's fast forward through a couple of days towards the race weekend and see what messages we've got in. The first load of inbox messages here: car development, key staff, Mike Elliott, Jared Murphy, they'll be around for this season at least. Sponsor obligations, merchandising, race day factory event, a load of different things you need to tick off in order to get as much money as possible. And in this new year, with the salary cap and the cost cap in Formula One, you want to make sure that you get as much money as possible from doing these events. Back to the inbox we go. Now, one thing to let you know is I am playing this on the PS5. And first of all, I'm so happy that they've introduced a management game onto console. So let me know in the comments down below if you're playing on Xbox, if you're playing on PlayStation. Are you enjoying it so far? I've seen it on PC. I think it's fantastic on PC. I love management games on PC in general. I'm a big Football Manager fan. But for my PC, I don't think I'd be able to run it at the optimum settings that I would like. So I'm pretty happy that they've been able to put this on the PlayStation. And the last message in our inbox: season kickoff party. Do we approve it or do we deny it? We enjoy our parties around here, and if we do win, or if we manage to get onto the podium, we'll be having a lot of parties. So let's improve the driver morale, let's improve the staff morale, and confirm that party. Happy days. Let's continue through the race weekend, and we're gonna get our results for post Bahrain testing. Let's see how the car is stacking up to some of our rivals. Let's have a look here. It's not looking good at all. The top speed is down in 9th. The acceleration is in 7th. Low and medium speed, we're in the middle with 5th. So that's okay, I guess. It gives us a little bit of a baseline, but we need to increase that speed. We need to get much faster. That is not good whatsoever. So we're going to look at some car part development in a minute, and then race prep for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Let's take a look at that first. Bahrain circuit info. lets you know what tires you'll be able to use, what the temperatures are. It's in the middle of the desert, so no chance of rain. We're not need to worry about that. Performance targets, let's take a look. So qualifying position, reach Q. We are going to reach Q3. We should be able to reach Q3 quite comfortably, so let's do that there. And then in terms of race targets, finish position, we're not going to worry about fastest lap, because fastest lap, actually, what we will do is we'll tick fastest lap as well. Let's go for both of them. Fastest lap will give us a little bit more added bonus in terms of money, but finish position, we're going to try to aim for top 6, and that's what we're going to hopefully be able to do quite comfortably. In terms of hot streaks, qualifying position streak 8th in the top 2 for a potential reward, and we're going to also add a finish position streak as well, just for that little bit of money, because I think both cars should finish in the top 8 in the first couple of races. So we're happy with both of those. Driver overview is fine, performance targets are fine. Let's take a look then in our inbox. Let's take a look at the design. So I was thinking the side pods first. Let's take a look. If we try to add a little bit of side pod performance, how much more speed can we get? So as you can see on the right hand side, it says suggested car performance for Bahrain. Obviously not all of the cars should be catered towards the same circuit, but it does give you a little bit of an idea on what you're able to work on. So wind tunnel hours, you only have 56 hours across the total, I believe, of the period there. You just need to make sure that you stick within those guidelines, and it's difficult considering you do need to do a lot of research and development on the parts. So let's go for 4 hours on these side pods, and then in terms of testing hours to make sure that everything works okay, we're going to knock that down to 0.4 as well. So they'll be quite similar, and that will give us a top speed boost. It will give us some good boost in terms of acceleration as well, and also the medium to high speed corners. Design focus, then we can look to change things here. So if we want to keep things balanced, that's what I'm going to do at first personally, but if we want to look at race performance, we can do that. If we want to look at optimized aerodynamics, we could do that if we wanted to, but I'm going to stick with balanced for now to try and get an all-round feel of the car. And then finally, engineers wise, how many do we want to stick on the side pods? Now you've got a maximum of 10 available at one time. Obviously you have to have a minimum of 1 assigned to a development part. I'm going to put 4 on this one and leave 6 available, and try to develop part of the floor as well with another 4. Now a big part of F1 Manager 22 will be just how quickly you want this designed. So if you go with a normal approach, it will take about a month, 31 days here, and that is the cheapest approach. And obviously with the cost cap, you want to make sure that you fit as much stuff in the money as possible, because you don't want to be over the cost cap. If I was to go for rushed, it's a little bit more expensive, but it cuts off 10 days. If I want that rushed side of things, if I want to get this car up to scratch as quickly as possible, I need to potentially consider rushing the parts and getting them onto the car soon. And then intense. If we want our designers to be able, and engineers to be able to look at future development and be able to increase them quicker, you might want to do intense. And if that's going to be a focus of your car moving forward, if you want to look at, say for example, side pods consistently, you might want to look at intense, because if you upgrade the side pods again and again and again, it could be done a little bit quicker on your future projects. In the meantime, I'm going to go for rushed, and we're going to confirm that, and it should be done in 21 days. So we'll continue that, and let's have a look at the floor, because that's the next major issue of the Mercedes. We got to stop the bouncing as soon as possible. And again, we're going to go with 4 hours of wind tunnel time, 0.4 in terms of hours, and we are going to look at design focus again. Do we go with optimized aerodynamics? No, we're going to keep it balanced for now. Development, we're going to go with 4 engineers, which saves 2 in case there are any particular issues or anything else we want to replace or change in the future. Approach, it's a lot more expensive if you were looking to do something with the floor. That's probably a similar case with the chassis. These are important parts of the car, probably the most important parts of the car in these new regulations. We're gonna not go for rush, we're just gonna go for normal. And even though it will take 58 days, we probably could rush it. It's a little bit more expensive, but we're just gonna go for normal. We're going to take that, and hopefully we'll see a little bit more performance once those two come in.
Welcome to the archipelago of Formula One. Bahrain might have a small land footprint, but it's showing its big spirit right now in the grandstands. Either way, it's time for another fantastic weekend of Grand Prix racing. The Bahrain International Circuit is a challenging track, and the cars routinely have to brake from high gear to low to take the narrow turns. With the need for downhill braking, the risk of locking up is one drivers will need to manage. It's all about focus and balance to get victory here. At this early stage in the season, there are still plenty of opportunities for things to change. In this sport, there simply are no guarantees. Okay then, let's get to it.
Here we are then at practice for Bahrain on the Friday. Practice 1 and 2 is today. And I'm not going to bring you practice. Obviously, I'm still going to play around and tweak some of the setups. I'm going to play around with some of the settings that you need to do, and I'm going to obviously learn it. It's the first time that I am playing this game for myself, so I'm going to bring you the majority, if not all, of the race footage, and I'll talk you through the practice sessions before. I don't know, obviously, if you guys want to see practice, so let me know in the comments down below. Do you want me to show you practice? Do you just want me to bring you sort of highlights of practice, let you know how things are standing? Because obviously we need to do certain programs on this to make sure we get the optimized setup. So for this time, I don't want to keep you around and bore you too long. You might not be interested in practice at all. Some people are. I know I love practice, and I probably spend most of the time in practice, if not in the race. So let me know in the comments down below if you'd like me to show you practice. For episode 2, I might do practice anyway, see how it goes, and if you guys like it, I can continue doing so. But let me know what you guys prefer. Do you guys sim the practice? Do you guys do it yourself? Do you guys like getting involved in the setups? Because for me, that is a major part of F1 Manager 22, and doing the setups is absolutely fun for me. So I'm going to jump into that. I'm going to get through practice, and then I'll bring you the race setting once that is all complete. And after a positive practice session, practice 1, practice 2, practice 3, where we top the timesheets across all 3 sessions, we have in fact qualified in 5th with Lewis Hamilton and 7th place with George Russell. So there's a lot of work to be done with this Mercedes team. As the pre-season numbers showed, we have to get those upgrades, and we have to get those upgrades in fast. We're currently 7/10 of a second off Max Verstappen with Lewis Hamilton, and 8/10 of a second off Max Verstappen with George Russell. And the fact that we're just edging out Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri and just edging out Valtteri Bottas with Lewis Hamilton.
Race day has arrived, and the time has come for these drivers to fight it out wheel to wheel.
We saw a reasonable push from Mercedes in qualifying, and they'll have plenty of opportunities here to achieve a great result. The work Red Bull did during qualifying was nothing short of spectacular. Now let's see if they can repeat that for today's race. The sky tonight is mostly clear, with only a few clouds. Nothing to worry about for now, but let's see how the situation unfolds.
And there's going to be a lot for the teams to handle. So will the drivers and their cars be able to cope with the pressure? Let's find out right here at the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Now, ahead of today's race at Bahrain, here's a little bit of a look at the build-up to the race. And what we do is, during the practice sessions, I spent most of my time, if not all of my time, working on the setup. We've got a 97% confidence for Lewis Hamilton, which is fantastic. And really and truly, that is probably the closest that we could get for our first try to perfect. And what I'll do is I will bring you future practice sessions. This was just the first one to introduce you to the series, and I just want to kind of know if you were interested in seeing more practice sessions on this career mode. With George Russell, the car setup is at 98%. So we've done pretty well on the setup so far. I'm not too sure why the numbers are not showing up like Lewis Hamilton's was, but George Russell is now at the minute just being edged out pace-wise, and it's down to him to close the gap on Lewis at the start of this race. Here we go then. Race start. Can we maybe nick a podium?
Here. The drivers now lined up on the grid. And here we've got Lewis Hamilton. A top 10 position today, but will they be able to capitalize on it? And here we can see Russell. With a top 10 position on the grid, this race could really go either way for them. And we're just moments away now. Here we go with the Bahrain.
Here we go then. 5 red lights, and it is lights out, and away we go.
And away we go.
Lewis Hamilton with a pretty sluggish start. Has to watch out for Valtteri Bottas on the outside. Becomes the inside of turn 1. Lewis just avoids the contact there. He's down to P6, and George Russell has been overtaken by Pierre Gasly. He's now down to 8th, and it's not a good start for us Mercedes boys there. Not a good start for us at all. With Lewis Hamilton, we're just going to ease things for now. Pierre Gasly is behind, so what we'll do is we're going to go aggressive on the tyres just to start off. And we are going to deploy a little bit of ERS as well, and the same for George Russell. A little bit aggressive on the tyres and deploy some ERS for the opening laps. Try to get these positions back, because we don't really want to be stuck behind the likes of Valtteri Bottas. We don't want to be stuck behind Pierre Gasly. If we can get them out of the way pretty quickly, as there's a yellow flag. Who's gone off? There's been a crash. There's been a crash up ahead. Who is it involving? Do we know?
Sounds like there's been contact.
Let's have a look at the replay.
Right, watch this.
It's at the back of the grid. It's involving Mick Schumacher, who crashes into Sebastian Vettel.
It's caused absolute carnage.
Absolute carnage, as Crofty says. Is it going to be a safety car?
Devastated. They'll be.
Let's wait and see. It's a yellow flag at the minute. No safety car. And we're good to go, as Lewis Hamilton is now being put under pressure by Pierre Gasly. This is now getting pretty tricky for us, as Valtteri Bottas has got out and got away. Let's take a look at how people's tyres are looking. Everyone else has gone very attacking with their tyres. So we're in a decent position tyre-wise. 95% as opposed to everyone else's 86%. Let's look behind us. Yeah, we've got away from Gasly a little bit there. So let's get stuck in to closing the gap on Valtteri Bottas. P5 for Lewis Hamilton is probably the best that we are likely to achieve today. George Russell, I'm not too sure about. Let's have a look. Is he likely to overtake Pierre Gasly here? No. Gasly shuts the door. It's going to be a long race if we're stuck behind these two. We do need to clear this traffic a little bit quickly, and if we're able to do that, we could be in for a good race. All right, with DRS now, we are in the DRS range of Valtteri Bottas. We've enabled overtake for Lewis Hamilton. It's a poor exit, but do we have the speed to get around the outside? Yes, we do, and we are gone away from Valtteri Bottas. Let's now hit neutral and up the tyres to attack. Let's rinse out some of these tyres, trying to get some more of a gap to Valtteri Bottas. If we can get away from Valtteri Bottas, get out of the DRS range, that will be fantastic. And George Russell is up into P7. He's got by Pierre Gasly using the DRS. So fantastic stuff there. Good overtake by George Russell. With Lewis Hamilton, we are rinsing the tyres now. We are still on 80s as George Russell. Let's have a look at this replay.
Now, just watch the Mercedes here.
DRS is open, down the start, finish straight. Easy overtake for George, and we are up into P7, where we started.
Gaining a position there. Oh,
now let's try our best to get out of DRS range. With George, we are going to go attacking on the tyres.
Looks like that was a position gained for Alfa Romeo. Let's take a closer look. Now we see
Valtteri Bottas has got his position back on Lewis Hamilton. This is becoming an annoying battle now.
Gaining a position there. They make it look so easy. Alpine just advanced. Here's the replay. Okay.
George Russell has lost another position in this race. DRS open and Fernando Alonso goes cruising down the inside and George Russell's now down to 8th place. So all of that positivity from practice has now slowly disappeared. We're now in a race to chase Fernando Alonso for P7 with George Russell, as Lewis Hamilton still cannot get past Valtteri Bottas. We need to start thinking about saving some battery soon. Lewis Hamilton's got seemingly a lot of fuel on board, so we have gone ultra attack. We are wringing everything out of this car that we can. Can we get down the inside of Valtteri Bottas, down into turn 1 and make the move stick for P5? Last of the late breakers. No contact. It's a brilliant move by Hamilton. Leaves the space for Valtteri Bottas and just makes it. Well done. Lewis Hamilton up into P5, and we're going to continue attacking. We have to be careful here with the tires. Looking at some of the data, we do seem like we are on point here. We're probably going to stick with a one-stop strategy, but we're now out of DRS range of Valtteri Bottas, and we are able to push on now with Lewis Hamilton. Let's harvest some battery with Lewis Hamilton and check out from George Russell's point of view. Lap number 6, Lewis Hamilton's in 5th and George Russell's in 8th. George Russell now then on overtake with the ERS. DRS is open. This should be an easy move on Fernando Alonso. It is down the start-finish straight. We can even close the ERS battery early, and George Russell is now up into P7. And we need to start thinking about saving some tyres. So we're going on to standard with George Russell. Let's try and close that gap on Valtteri Bottas up in front. Lap 7, still sitting in P5 and P7, but our tyre wear seems to be a little bit decent by comparison to everyone else.
Just moved up a place.
No need to charge the back. Yep.
Now on lap 10, both the Mercedes, we seem to be stuck in a train behind Valtteri Bottas, and I think George Russell might be the faster of the two. We do have to be careful though, because do we want our guys to battle at this early stage of the season? We are wasting our tyres quite a bit trying to get by Valtteri Bottas as we go down the inside. Who's going to hit the DRS line? Who's going to have the DRS for the start-finish straight? I think it's probably Valtteri. We do, and we managed to make the move stick. Can George Russell get by Valtteri Bottas as well, as Lewis Hamilton has made it up into P5? Can we stick there now? We're going to need to save some tyres. We're on 58%, and it's now down to George Russell to make this move stick. We're still behind at the minute, behind Valtteri Bottas, but with the DRS open, we should now be able to make this move quite comfortably, and we're back into P5 and P6. 15, and we are behind Valtteri Bottas. We're ahead of him again with Lewis Hamilton, and George Russell is behind Valtteri Bottas as well. There seems to be a long train as Zhou Guan Yu and Lando Norris both come into the pits, as Valtteri Bottas has got ahead of Lewis Hamilton once again. So we're currently sitting in P6 and P7. It's Valtteri Bottas who is leading the train at the minute. As Lewis Hamilton gets by, can George Russell get by as well. There's 40 laps remaining in this race. Let's have a look at the Lewis Hamilton overtake on Valtteri Bottas. Down the start-finish straight, DRS is open, and it's an easy move. It's just a DRS train. There's a lot of overtakes happening, all due to DRS. So we do have to be careful with that. Now that we're at the front of the train, it's a little bit of a problem. But we are coming up towards the pit window soon enough. So we're going to see what the leaders do in terms of coming into the pits. We have a little bit more fuel, so we're going to push with Lewis, and we are going to go aggressive on the tires with Lewis. Same with George. We're going aggressive on the tires for the next few laps and pushing as well. Are we able to get clear of the Alfa Romeos? That's going to be the main thing, as George Russell is now right behind Lewis Hamilton. George Russell gets past Lewis Hamilton. That's a good move there. We need to think about our pit stops soon enough, as the Mercedes are now battling each other. What we're going to do is bring Lewis in this lap, and we're going to try and cover off the Alfa Romeos. We've gone one lap longer. What have they gone on to tire-wise? The Alfa Romeos, Joe has gone on to hards, and Bottas has gone on to medium. So I think with Lewis Hamilton, we are going to come in now for mediums. Lewis Hamilton's going to come in for mediums, as hopefully there's no contact. We're boxing with Lewis Hamilton. George Russell, he's going to come in next lap for hards, the lap after Lewis Hamilton. What we need to do, though, is we do need to tell them not to fight. Don't fight, teammate. So we've told George Russell just to back off for the time being, because Lewis Hamilton is boxing in this lap for fresh mediums, and George Russell's going to come in the lap after. We're currently sitting in P1 and P2. Not that that means anything. We're the only ones yet to pit, I believe, ourselves and Ocon. So can we get a decent overcut with Lewis Hamilton? Remember, our main battle is with Valtteri Bottas, who Fernando Alonso has somehow now got behind. Fernando Alonso has managed to jump a spot ahead of Zhou in the pit stops and is now right behind Valtteri Bottas. So we have to be careful here as Lewis Hamilton comes into the pits.
Right, push hard now. Yeah, Roger.
Lewis Hamilton with a decent stop.
Decrease, lift and coast.
The AlphaTauri is going down the start-finish straight now. I think we might have missed out here unless we can get on the power quickly. There's the AlphaTauri. Do we get out in front of him? No, we're just behind, but we are ahead of Fernando Alonso. That's the main thing. We are ahead of Fernando Alonso, so now we can chase Valtteri Bottas. George Russell is on his in-lap. We're getting him to push as hard as possible. Lewis Hamilton has made his pit stop. Let's have a look at some of the tyres of the other competitors. Leclerc is on mediums. Verstappen's on mediums. So it seems as though mediums is the best way to go for George Russell as well, as we now need to bring him in. And George Russell is now coming into the pits on lap 20 for fresh medium tyres. He is absolutely attacking as he comes around the final corner to enter the start-finish straight and then come in for some new fresh rubber. Will he be able to come out behind Lewis Hamilton? That's where he was on the road before the pit stop. Let's have a look at Lewis Hamilton. He is just behind Valtteri Bottas with Alonso right behind him. This has been the battle that we have had all race long. Does this fight play a benefit for George Russell? Does he overcut the lot of them? As Lewis Hamilton coming down the start-finish straight, can we make this pass happen with George Russell coming out of the pits? Where is George Russell going to be? He's just behind, and George Russell is behind all of them. George Russell is now down in 8th. staying out an extra lap with George Russell has not helped us whatsoever, as Lewis Hamilton is back up into 5th place. That was his rightful position beforehand, and George Russell is now currently in P8. So it's going to be a little bit of a battle for him to now get past Alonso and Bottas, but while this fight is going on, he's on fresher tyres, so we can attack. We're going to go standard for the time being because we are in DRS range. We don't need to worry about ruining our tyres just yet, and we're going to go balanced with the fuel. Lewis Hamilton, he needs to do some fuel saving because he's just over a little bit. It's going to be tough with Valtteri Bottas behind us. Lap 21, Hamilton's in P5, Russell's in P8, but it's tough because Valtteri Bottas has got past Lewis Hamilton again. This is going to be a full race. Oh, it's Lewis Hamilton spun. Lewis Hamilton spun. Is he out of the race? What's happened there to Lewis Hamilton?
Let's take a closer look. Now, just watch the Mercedes here.
Out of nowhere, he's completely lost the back end of the car and he's spun. He's spun and now he's completely going to be out of the points. He's back in P13. We're back in P13 with Lewis Hamilton. It's going to be a fight back to try and get anything from this race now. But he was down in P5. And what was looking like a solid points finish for both the Mercedes is now looking like a solid disappointment. Another mistake by one of our drivers is this time George Russell has run wide. We're not even getting them to push, and the setup seems to be okay. George Russell runs wide at the last turn. He's not lost any positions at all. He's still in P7, but now the gap behind to Pierre Gasly has closed, and the gap ahead to Fernando Alonso is much wider. We're now 7 seconds behind Fernando Alonso, so if we're going to get points, it seems as though it's only going to be 7th place with George Russell, because Lewis Hamilton, he's way down the pack in 13th following that spin, fighting with Valtteri Bottas. And this first weekend, despite looking positive after the first 3 practice sessions, is now descended into absolute madness.
So push hard, push hard.
Right, lap number 41, and George Russell, who was in the middle of nowhere, is now with an opportunity to overcut again Valtteri Bottas and Fernando Alonso. So George Russell is coming into the pits this lap, but we have some fresh tyres now, fresher tyres than they had, to put an almighty lap together for George Russell. So everything is up. We've got attack mode on, the fuel is on push, and our ERS is being deployed, and we are doing the same with Lewis Hamilton, who is currently caught up to the back of Esteban Ocon, and we're going to try and do something similar with them. At the minute, George Russell's going to come in, box, and hopefully with fresher soft tyres, we're going to be able to get ahead of the likes of Valtteri Bottas and Alonso. But it's going to have to be a good pit stop. Can we make the jump here with George Russell? And then we're going to have to potentially close up to the back of the likes of Lando Norris and Zhou Guanyu, who are on an alternative strategy. George Russell, let's see how he's going. He's gone purple middle sector, so it's going fantastically well so far. He's going fast. It wasn't the best first sector, but in he comes into the pits. Are we able to make this strategy work? Where will he come out in comparison to Valtteri Bottas and in comparison to Fernando Alonso? It's a quick stop. 3 seconds, not the best, but not the worst. I think that is Valtteri Bottas and Alonso coming down the start-finish straight now. So, as Lewis Hamilton overtakes Esteban Ocon, let's see, George Russell, where does he come out? Behind a Williams, and it didn't really work too well, but we have potentially closed the gap, as Lewis Hamilton is now pushing like a madman. He's ahead of the McLaren, and he's ahead of the
Mercedes moved up a place.
He's ahead of the McLaren, and he's ahead of Zhou, as well as ahead of Esteban Ocon. Can we make this stop? Can we make this one stop work with Lewis Hamilton? Potentially. He's got 38% left of tyre wear. They're medium tyres though, so we could be in for a little bit of trouble when it comes to the later part of this race. I reckon he could have made it work on a set of hards, so potentially we could have done that after the spin. Maybe we should have brought him in then instead of sticking on the same strategy. But George Russell currently down in P11 on the soft tyres. Let's try to save some battery here with both of our drivers and see what we can get done. Lewis Hamilton, 37% left on his tyre wear. It's going to be difficult to get to the end, but we might try. If anyone can do it, Lewis Hamilton can. There's potentially some decent points as Zhou comes into the pits from hard, and so does Lando Norris. So maybe it's best to try and stick ahead of them and come into the pits. Let's do that, actually. Pits. We're going to come in, box in for some softs. What we're going to do now with Lewis is we are absolutely going to fly. We're going to attack, we're going to push, and we're going to deploy some of our ERS as well. So let's try and get a fast lap here and try to get out ahead of Zhou and ahead of Lando Norris. So Lewis Hamilton is into the pits on lap number 44, ahead of Esteban Ocon as well. Can we maybe make a jump somewhere with Lewis Hamilton? It's a slow start. We're not able to release because of the Alpine, and it's a 3.9 second stop. And that is probably now going to put us behind the AlphaTauri that we were ahead of and behind Lando Norris as well, unless something special happens. Lewis Hamilton coming out of the pits. There's the Alfa Romeo of Zhou Guanyu. Are we just ahead? Yes, we are. We're ahead of Zhou, just about. Let's now try to close the gap on Pierre Gasly ahead. Maybe with Lewis Hamilton, we can salvage an 8th place. In terms of George Russell, I think his race in 7th is done. I think it will probably be a comfortable 7th place position. I'm not too sure if we'll be able to do anything else. We do have to conserve some fuel, though, to make sure that we do make it to the end. Right, we're now right on the back of Pierre Gasly with Lewis Hamilton. Are we able to make this pass stick under DRS? Yes, we do. We make the turn ahead of Pierre Gasly, and now we're up into P8 with Lewis Hamilton. So he was up in P5. It could have been a comfortable P5 with Lewis had that spin not happened. But with the fresher tyres, a comfortable move on Pierre Gasly down the inside in the DRS zone is a comfortable move, and Lewis is up into P8. So we do potentially get double points on our first race, but given the standards of Mercedes, double points is not really the most successful race whatsoever for us. Pierre Gasly goes around the outside. It's a brilliant maneuver. They're still side by side heading towards the next couple of turn-ins, and Lewis Hamilton just stays ahead. He gets the elbows out and is pretty aggressive as we now go back onto neutral with the ERS with Lewis Hamilton. George Russell, he's comfortably in 7th place. He's in the middle of nowhere pretty much. 3.5 seconds behind Fernando Alonso and 5 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who you see just in the background there. Let's have a look from behind. Do we stay ahead of Pierre Gasly? No, the DRS is open once again, and Pierre Gasly makes the move stick quite comfortably. But we still have the fresher tyres. That is the main thing here. We can push in terms of our lap times because we do have a little bit of fuel remaining. Let's try to get... Actually, what we'll do is we'll try to hold out for the DRS on the start-finish straight. We don't want to overtake him too early. If we can do this down the start-finish straight now, that will be fantastic. Who gets the DRS? It will be us. We're behind at the detection point. Let's now push, and the DRS is activated, open, and we go speeding by Pierre Gasly. Hopefully that's the last of it. It's been a very, very difficult race in terms of battling the likes of Pierre Gasly and the likes of the Alfa Romeos, both of them. They've been tricky. But now, I just want a comfortable end to the race. P7 and P8. I won't be happy with, considering we started P5 and P7, but it's points at the end of the day. And that is what we need to consider. George Russell has closed the gap to Fernando Alonso to 2.8 seconds. Is it a possibility? Let's take a look at Fernando Alonso's tyres. 59%. Let's go for it. Let's go on aggressive with George Russell. And let's deploy some battery. We've got quite a lot of spare battery. So let's at least try to close that gap on Fernando Alonso where we can. And with Lewis Hamilton behind, can he get clear of Pierre Gasly? That's probably going to be the main thing for the end of the race, to keep Pierre Gasly out of DRS range. Lewis Hamilton sets the fastest lap of the race on lap 49, but somehow still almost gets overtaken by Pierre Gasly. It'll be fantastic if we can bring home the extra point for fastest lap of the race, but I'm not sure we'll be able to. Pierre Gasly is giving us a tricky time of it. It's up ahead. Somehow, George Russell has closed the gap to 1.2 seconds on Fernando Alonso. Let's look at the tyre wear. We're currently sitting on 62%, whereas Alonso is on 55%. There's an opportunity here for a P6 and a P8 up ahead if we can take it. Let's see. Currently, we are in DRS range now with George Russell. Is it open? Yes, it is. So we're going to keep pushing. Looking for the maneuver down the inside of Fernando Alonso. Has he got a problem? Somehow the pace of Fernando Alonso has completely dropped off. That is a brilliant move by George Russell. And now we're just going to have to save some battery because we've used a lot of it.
So marginal for fuel.
And we're going to have to conserve some fuel as well. That might be the tricky part of staying ahead of Fernando Alonso. Lewis Hamilton on lap 52 makes the pass past Pierre Gasly once again. And this battle's been going on for the past 5 or 6 laps now. We've got much fresher tyres. We've managed to save the battery a little bit, and we're going to save some fuel as well. Can we get out ahead by clear of a second? Because I don't want Pierre Gasly to come back with DRS. It's a brilliant move. Again, it's done comfortably before the corner with DRS open. And now let's hope we can run away with it with Lewis. We're currently sitting in P6 with George Russell, who is on the fastest lap of the race, and Lewis Hamilton in P8. But I don't think with 5 laps to go, we'll be able to close that 5-second gap to Fernando Alonso. So if this race were to finish P6 and P8, I'll have to accept it, given the fact that we had George Russell run wide and we had Lewis Hamilton spin earlier on during the race. Now, all of a sudden, this race with 2 laps to go has got very interesting. We've managed to close up behind Fernando Alonso in P7. We have potentially got some DRS down the start-finish straight on Fernando Alonso. So we're going to neutralize our ERS. We've gone and pushed the fuel, and we're on ultra attack on the tires. Can we make this move happen? All of a sudden, we have a P6 and P7 in our sights. Can Lewis Hamilton get past Fernando Alonso down the inside of turn 1? They managed not to make contact, and we are just ahead of Fernando Alonso in P7. That is a brilliant move, and we managed to keep hold of the DRS as well. It's fantastic that we're able to do that. Let's take a look at the replay here, as down the inside on turn 1, Lewis Hamilton keeps control of the car beautifully. No contact made with Fernando Alonso whatsoever, and we can hopefully now run away with it with a final lap. I can't believe that we've been able to close that gap, as the engineers in the pit garage are going mental. Can we now get out of DRS range so that we don't need to worry about defending from Fernando Alonso? We can look ahead. I don't think we'll be able to close on George Russell. George Russell does have the fresher tyres, and he probably deserves to see out the race in front. Let's take a look at the tyre situation at the minute. George Russell's on 38%. We're on 34%. Out in front, Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz down in the 24s. So we do have some tyre wear that we are able to get rid of if we need to. We're going to leave Lewis Hamilton on push or on attack with the tyres, and we're also going to deploy some ERS where we have to. George Russell has got quite a lot of battery to use as well. We don't need to worry about fuel too much. We are within the limit. It's fantastic to see the recovery drive from Hamilton, who was down in 13th, and it looked as though his race was over, but as ever the champion he is, he didn't give up, and it's been a brilliant comeback. So I'm not entirely surprised he's managed to wrestle his way back into P7 with a possibility of P6. Lap number 56 of 57. Next time round will be the final lap of the race. Can we keep a hold of these positions? Because Alonso and Gasly, they are closing. They are closing fast. And if they are in DRS range, that is going to be a bit of a problem for us.
I think we've had...
So marginal for fuel. Yep, fine.
And somehow, all of a sudden, Lewis Hamilton's got through on George Russell. We've got a negative message of fuel on George Russell's car. All of a sudden, things have gone bad for George Russell. I don't know what has happened there. We had a negative message about fuel for George Russell, and he slowed down badly, as Lewis Hamilton is now going to conserve so that we don't have to worry about that. The ERS is gone for Hamilton. This final lap has been a bit of a mess for Mercedes. I need to wrap my head around some of the strategy decisions here, because I definitely cost us a P5 and P6, I think, in terms of our early pit stops. But George Russell, who is having some problems with his fuel, is now having to defend from Fernando Alonso. I'm not exactly sure how we are going to handle it. Lewis Hamilton's managed to save some of his battery. George Russell, can he deploy some of his battery? He's going down the inside of Lewis Hamilton. We don't really need them to race. Please, no contact towards the end of this race. But we are going to let them do it. We're going to go standard on the tyres with George Russell because no contact needed whatsoever. Please just bring it home in one piece. We need to see the checkered flag. Let's deploy battery with both of our drivers. We need to try and run away from the likes of Alonso and Gasly where we can. We do have the fresher tyres, but they've got more DRS and ERS, I'm sure. George Russell, he's going to look down the inside potentially of Lewis Hamilton. As we come round the final corners, can we be sure with Lewis and with George Russell to stay ahead of the Alpine and ahead of the AlphaTauri? George Russell had 6th place in the bag, but unfortunately an issue with the fuel meant he wasn't able to keep hold of it. He slowed down at the wrong time, and Lewis Hamilton and George Russell finish P6 and P7. It could have been P5 and 6 if we managed to look after things a little bit better. But man, that's going to be more difficult than I thought it was going to be. This season is going to be a tough one. As we take a look then at the standings of the first race at Bahrain, Carlos Sainz, the winner, Max Verstappen finishing in 2nd place, Charles Leclerc in 3rd, Sergio Perez with a bit of a lonely race in P4, Valtteri Bottas up into P5, Lewis Hamilton, a stunning comeback considering he spun and was down in P13, but lucky to finish in P6 because of George Russell's fuel issue and him slowing down towards the end of the race. George Russell finished in P7, Fernando Alonso in P8, Pierre Gasly in P9, and Zhou Guanyu in P10 with the final points paying position. In terms of the driver's standings, it's still early, but Lewis Hamilton in 6th, George Russell in 7th, and I think we're probably going to stick with that for a long time until we can get some positive changes to the car. But a huge positive for George Russell, he set the fastest lap of the race, so he does get an extra point for that. In constructors, we are sitting in 3rd place behind Red Bull and Ferrari, and again, until we get some updates to the car, we're gonna probably be stuck in 3rd place where we can. But that is going to be the end of episode 1 with the Mercedes. The sponsors were happy in terms of the performance incentives. We managed to get the bonus for fastest lap, so fantastic. And we did reach Q3 performance guarantees. We did finish in the top 8, so that's fantastic as well. And the sponsors base rates stayed the same as well. Next episode then will be at Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and hopefully we can have a little look and see if we're any closer to getting the upgrades that we need to push this team forward. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Again, let me know in the comment section down below if you'd like to see more practice, if you'd like to see what I do with the setups, if you'd like to see how I go about those practice sessions, it doesn't have to be the whole thing. It could be a little bit here and there. But in the meantime, stay safe. Subscribe if you are new around here. Take care. And I will see you for the next episode in Jeddah.